The world thought it knew Elvis Presley, the man, the legend, the king. But the FBI's newly released classified files paint a chillingly different picture. Hidden for decades, these documents whisper of secrets darker than fame could ever hide. They reveal a man haunted by fears, stalked by threats, and watched by the very government that once praised him. The king was never safe, one file notes, and those words change everything. What did Elvis know that made him a target? The truth inside these pages is more terrifying than anyone imagined. The man they couldn't forget. Raymond Clark was the kind of man who noticed things others did not because he was clever or sharp-eyed in the way detectives are in movies, but because he cared. He cared about the small details, the way a file was mislabeled, the way dust settled differently on boxes that had been moved recently, the way silence sounded different in rooms that held secrets. At 63 years old, Raymond was known throughout the FBI headquarters as the gentle soul of the archives. He never raised his voice. He never rushed anyone. And when people came to him panicked about a missing document, he would smile kindly and say, "Don't worry, we'll find it together." Now, with only 2 weeks left before retirement, Raymond walked through the long corridors of Section 7 with a bittersweet feeling in his chest. This place had been his second home for 37 years. Every box, every shelf, every flickering light fixture was familiar to him. He knew which floorboards creaked. He knew which doors stuck in humid weather. He knew the building like he knew the lines in his own hands. Section 7 was different from the other archive rooms. It was older, deeper, forgotten by almost everyone except Raymond. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sickly glow. The air smelled like old paper and something else, something metallic and cold that Raymond could never quite identify. Rows and rows of gray metal shelves stretched into the shadows, stacked with cardboard boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. Raymond moved slowly down the aisles, checking labels, making notes on his clipboard. Most of the boxes were routine, closed cases from the 50s and 60s, surveillance files on long-dead mobsters, wiretap transcripts from forgotten operations. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place, until he reached the back corner. There, shoved behind a stack of boxes labeled "Classified Destroyed," was a container Raymond had never seen before. It sat at an odd angle, as if someone had hidden it in a hurry and never came back. The cardboard was brown with age, and thick strips of packing tape, double-layered and yellowed, sealed it shut. Across the top, written in faded black marker, were the words, "Presley, EA, confidential, eyes only." Raymond stopped walking. His breath caught in his throat. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the box, feeling something he couldn't name. It wasn't exactly a curiosity. It was more like dread, like the box was wrong somehow, like it did not belong in this room, in this building, in this world. He glanced over his shoulder, though he knew he was alone. The lights flickered once, twice, and the hum of the ventilation system seemed suddenly too loud. Raymond knelt down slowly, his knees protesting with soft pops. He pulled the box toward him. It was heavy, heavier than it should have been for its size. He ran his fingers over the tape, feeling the rough texture, noticing how it had been applied with care, overlapping strips, reinforced corners, as if whoever sealed it wanted to make absolutely sure it stayed closed. He took out his pocket knife, the same one his father had given him 40 years ago, and slid the blade under the edge of the tape. It resisted at first, stiff and stubborn, but eventually gave way with a soft tearing sound that seemed too loud in the empty room. Raymond lifted the lid. Inside were documents, hundreds of them, thick stacks of typewritten pages, some stapled together, others loose and shuffled out of order. There were black and white photographs clipped to manila folders. There were audio reels wrapped in cracked plastic. There were handwritten notes on official FBI letterhead. And there were maps, marked with red circles and arrows, annotated with dates and locations. Raymond picked up the first document. His hands were shaking slightly. The paper was brittle, yellowed at the edges, and smelled faintly of mildew. The heading read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Surveillance Division. The date was June 12, 1956. The subject line said, Presley, Elvis Aaron, initial contact report. Raymond's heart began to beat faster. He flipped through more pages, surveillance logs, phone tap transcripts, travel itineraries, reports describing covert monitoring operations, intercepted communications, coded messages. But then Raymond saw something that made his blood run cold. The reports did not stop in 1977. They continued. 1978, 1979, 1980, 1981. Raymond's mouth went dry. Elvis Presley passed away on August 16, 1977. The whole world knew that. There had been a funeral, a grave at Graceland. Millions of people had mourned. It was one of the most documented deaths in American history. But these files said something different. Raymond pulled out a memo dated November 3, 1978, more than a year after Elvis's death. The text was brief and clinical. Subject active. Multiple sightings after 1977 confirmed. Field agents report continued monitoring per operational directive. Further investigation mandated Raymond read the words 3 times. His mind struggled to process what they meant. Subject active. Continued monitoring. Further investigation. He set the memo down carefully and reached back into the box. His fingers found a surveillance log from March 1979. The entry described a reported sighting in a small diner in northern Michigan. The agent's notes were terse and matter-of-fact. Subject observed at 14:22 hours. Positive visual identification pending. Subject departed premises before contact could be established. The surveillance team maintained distance per protocol. Another document detailed a phone call intercepted in June 1980. The call had been routed through multiple exchanges, making it nearly impossible to trace, but voice analysis suggested a match to known recordings of Elvis Presley. The transcript was incomplete, cut off mid-sentence with a note that read, "Recording equipment malfunction." Remainder of conversation lost. Raymond's hands were trembling now. He felt cold despite the stuffy warmth of the archive room. He set the documents aside and looked deeper into the box. That's when he saw it. A small audio reel, no bigger than his palm, wrapped in clear plastic that had turned brittle with age. A label was affixed to the side, handwritten in neat block letters, "Evidence of Graceland, 1981. Raymond stared at it for a long time. Part of him wanted to put it back, to seal the box, to walk away and pretend he'd never found it. But he couldn't. He'd spent 37 years in these archives because he believed in the truth, because he believed that secrets, no matter how old or how buried, deserved to see the light. He stood up, legs stiff, and carried the reel to the corner of the room where an old reel-to-reel machine sat covered in dust. It was a relic from another era, but Raymond knew how to use it. He'd played countless recordings over the years, confessions, wiretaps, interviews. He threaded the tape carefully, his fingers clumsy with nerves, and pressed play. For a moment, there was only static, a soft, crackling hiss that filled the room like white noise. Then, cutting through the static, came a voice. It was low, tired, unmistakable. "I cannot keep doing this." Raymond froze. The voice was rough, strained, as if the speaker hadn't slept in days. But it was familiar in a way that made his skin prickle. "You don't understand. They're watching me. They've always been watching me." Another voice responded, muffled, indistinct. Raymond couldn't make out the words. The first voice spoke again, louder now, edged with something between anger and terror. "I thought it would stop after I left. I thought if I disappeared, they'd let me go. But they would not. They're everywhere. I see them in the streets, in the cars." The recording cut abruptly to static. Then, just before the tape ran out, a faint whisper threaded through the noise. "They're watching me." Raymond stood motionless in the empty room. The tape continued to spin, producing only the soft hiss of blank magnetic strips. His heart pounded in his chest. His mouth was dry. His hands, still gripping the edge of the machine, were slick with sweat. He rewound the tape and played it again. Same voice, same words, same fear. He stopped the machine and stepped back, staring at it as if it might come alive. Why did the FBI have files suggesting Elvis Presley did not die in 1977? Why were there surveillance reports dated years after his supposed death? And why had this box been hidden so deep that even Raymond, who knew every corner of these archives, had never seen it until now? Raymond looked back at the scattered documents, the photographs, the reels. His mind raced, questions piled on top of questions. But one question rose above all the others, loud and urgent and impossible to ignore. Who had been watching Elvis Presley? And why had the FBI buried everything about it so completely that the truth had nearly disappeared forever? The king who lived in fear. In the winter of 1975, Elvis began keeping a diary. Not the kind celebrities keep for future biographies, but something private, something raw. He wrote in it late at night when Graceland was quiet and everyone else had gone to sleep. The leather cover was worn smooth by his hands, and the pages were filled with his slanted handwriting, words that tumbled out fast, like he was trying to catch thoughts before they disappeared. The first entry was simple, almost innocent. December 8, 1975, cannot sleep tonight. Keep hearing things. Maybe it's just the house settling. Maybe it's nothing. But I feel like someone's listening. Even when I'm alone, Elvis had always been watched. From the moment he stepped onto a stage in Memphis as a teenager, eyes had followed him. Cameras, reporters, fans who screamed his name until their voices broke. But this was different. This wasn't adoration. This was something colder. Something that made his skin crawl even when the room was warm. January 19, 1976. Had some visitors today. 2 men. Said they were fans from Texas. Asked for pictures like everyone does, but their questions were strange. They did not ask about music. They asked where I'd been last month, who I'd talked to in Los Angeles, what I thought about the president. I smiled. I always smile. But my stomach hurt the whole time Elvis tried to shake it off. He told himself he was being paranoid. Too many pills, too many sleepless nights, too many years of living like this. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It sat in his chest like a stone, heavy and cold and constant. His cousin Patsy noticed it one afternoon when they were sitting together in the jungle room. Elvis kept looking at the windows even though the curtains were drawn. "Elvis, honey, what's wrong?" she asked gently. "You keep looking around like you lost something." Elvis turned to her, and for a moment his face looked young and scared. "Patsy, you ever feel like you're being followed? Not by fans, by something else." "What do you mean?" He shook his head. "Never mind. I'm just tired." But he wasn't just tired. The diary entries grew darker as winter turned to spring. March 14, 1976. The phone rang at 2 in the morning. I answered. Nobody there, just breathing. Hung up. It rang again 5 minutes later. Same thing. I unplugged every phone in the house, but I swear I could still hear ringing somewhere deep in the walls. Elvis started pulling away from people. He stayed in his room more. He stopped coming downstairs for meals. His friends worried, but when they asked what was wrong, he just smiled that famous smile and said he was fine. He wasn't fine. He was drowning. Then came Las Vegas in the summer of 1976. Elvis was performing at the International Hilton, the same stage where he'd made his comeback years before. After one show, as he sat in his dressing room wiping sweat from his face with a towel, there was a knock at the door. Red West answered it and found a man standing in the hallway. He wore a dark suit that looked expensive and shoes that shined like mirrors. His face was blank, emotionless. "I need to speak with Mr. Presley," the man said quietly. "Alone." Red hesitated, but Elvis waved him off. "It's all right. Let him in." The man entered and closed the door behind him. He did not introduce himself. He did not ask for an autograph or a handshake. He just stood there, hands folded in front of him, watching Elvis with pale gray eyes that did not blink. "Mr. Presley," the man said, his voice flat and mechanical, "I'm here to deliver a warning. There is a federal operation currently monitoring certain musicians, individuals who have been identified as having political influence, whether intentional or not. You are one of those individuals." Elvis stared at him, confused and exhausted. "Political influence? I sing love songs. I make movies. I don't even vote half the time." The man tilted his head slightly like a bird studying prey. "You underestimate yourself. Millions of people listen to you. They trust you. They would follow you if you asked. That makes you dangerous." "Dangerous?" Elvis laughed, but it came out hollow. "To who?" "To anyone who wants control," the man said simply. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. There were no markings on it except for a faint emblem in the corner, an eagle clutching arrows, the FBI insignia. He placed the envelope on the table between them. "You should be very careful, Mr. Presley. There are forces at work that you do not understand and cannot control. Elvis picked up the envelope with shaking fingers. "What is this?" "A reminder," the man said. He turned and walked to the door, opened it, and paused. "One word. That's all you need to remember." He left. Elvis tore open the envelope. "Who was that guy?" Red asked. Elvis did not answer. He just folded the paper and put it in his pocket. That night he wrote in his diary, "They know. I don't know what they know or how they know it, but they know, and they're not going to stop watching. God help me." The months that followed were a nightmare. Elvis started giving things away: jewelry, cars, guitars, things he loved. He told his friends he was simplifying his life, but they knew better. He was preparing to leave. June 2nd, 1977. "Gave Lisa Marie my favorite ring today. She asked why. I told her I wanted her to have something to remember me by. She laughed. She doesn't understand. Nobody does." He changed his medication routine. He called his doctor, George Nicopolis, at strange hours, sometimes just to hear another human voice. July 28, 1977. Called Doc at 3 in the morning, told him I couldn't breathe. He came over, checked my heart, said I was fine, but I'm not fine. I can feel them closing in, like walls moving closer every day. His friends noticed how paranoid he'd become. He stopped answering the phone. He made people check under his car before he got in. He kept the curtains drawn even during the day. On August 10, 1977, Elvis called his spiritual advisor, Larry Geller, in the middle of the night. His voice was shaking. "Larry, listen to me. If something happens, if I disappear or die or whatever, you need to know it wasn't an accident. You hear me? It wasn't an accident." "Elvis, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" "They're closing in," Elvis whispered. "I've felt it for months, maybe years. I tried to ignore it, but I cannot anymore. They're everywhere, in the gates, on the phones, maybe even in this house." "Who?" "Elvis." "Who's closing in?" Elvis was quiet for a long time. "I don't know, but they're real." The FBI files found years later contained phone taps recorded around Graceland during those final days. One transcript, dated August 14, 1977, captured an unidentified voice on a monitored line whispering, "He knows too much. We're out of time." 2 days later, the world was told that Elvis Presley passed away in his bathroom. Heart failure, prescription doses, a tragic end to a troubled life. The funeral was broadcast on television. The grave was marked with flowers and tears, but the FBI files told a different story. Medical reports inside the sealed box showed inconsistencies that should have raised alarms, autopsy dates that did not match official records, missing pages where toxicology results should have been, fingerprints on file that did not align with Elvis's known prints from his Army service. One handwritten note, clipped to a photograph of the closed casket, simply read, "Body released. Subject relocated." Another document, stamped with red ink, "Classified. Highest level," described a late-night operation on August 16th involving federal agents, unmarked vehicles, and a private aircraft departing Memphis. The destination was redacted. The passenger manifest was redacted, but the operation's codename was visible. King's Exit. Elvis's final diary entry, dated August 15, 1977, one day before his supposed death, contained only a single sentence written in shaky handwriting. "If this is the end, I hope I was good enough." Did Elvis Presley fake his own death to escape something he couldn't control? Or was he forced into hiding by people who feared the power he did not even know he had? The files offered no answers, only shadows, only questions, only the haunting possibility that the king never left the building. He just walked out the back door into a life no one would ever see. The night she met a ghost. Martha Kane was the kind of woman who made the world feel safer just by being in it. At 52, with soft gray hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled, she had spent nearly 3 decades as a nurse in a tiny clinic tucked away in the hills of rural Tennessee. Martha had gentle hands and a gentle heart. She never judged, she never turned anyone away, and she never, ever forgot a voice. October 12, 1984, started like any other night. Rain hammered the roof of the Riverside Clinic, and thunder rolled through the valley like distant drums. Martha was alone. Dr. Patterson had gone home sick, leaving her to handle things by herself. She did not mind. Most nights were quiet anyway. Then the door burst open. 2 men stumbled inside, soaked and breathless, supporting a third man between them. He was older, heavy-set, dressed in dark clothes that clung to his body. His head hung forward, and his breathing came in short, painful gasps. "Please," one of the men said urgently. "He's having chest pains." Martha did not hesitate. She guided them to the examination room and helped lower the man onto the bed. He wore dark sunglasses despite the late hour, and a thick beard covered most of his face. His skin was pale and clammy. "Sir, I need you to stay calm," Martha said softly, placing her hand on his shoulder. One of the men handed her a wallet. The driver's license inside read John Burroughs, but something about it felt wrong. Too clean, too new. Martha focused on her patient. She checked his pulse, took his blood pressure, and listened to his heart. As she reached for his wrist to insert an IV, his sleeve pulled back slightly. That's when she saw it. A small black tattoo of a lightning bolt with 3 letters beneath it, EAP. Her breath caught. She stared at it for just a moment too long before looking away and continuing her work. Her hands trembled now, but she kept her face calm. "Thank you," the man whispered. And Martha froze. That voice, low, rough, strained with pain but unmistakable. She had heard it 1,000 times on the radio, on television, in her daughter's bedroom when she played records until midnight. It was a voice the entire world knew. It was Elvis Presley's voice. Martha's heart pounded in her chest, but she said nothing. She administered medication, monitored his vitals, and spoke to him in the same gentle tone she used with all her patients. The 2 men who brought him stood near the door like silent guards. An hour passed. The man's breathing steadied. His color improved. He even managed a weak smile when Martha checked on him again. That's when 2 more men arrived. They wore dark suits that somehow looked dry despite the storm outside. Their faces were hard and emotionless. One of them flashed a badge too quickly for Martha to read. "We're here for the patient in room 2, he said flatly. Martha stepped forward. "I cannot release a patient without— This is a matter of national security," the man interrupted, his eyes cold. "You will erase all records tonight. The patient was never here. You never saw him. Do you understand?" Martha's mouth went dry. "I don't understand what's happening." The second man leaned closer, his voice quiet but threatening. "You don't need to understand. You need to comply, for your own safety, ma'am, and for your family's safety." The words were polite, but the threat was clear. Martha nodded slowly, her hands shaking. The men walked past her into the examination room. Minutes later, they emerged with the patient on a stretcher, covered with a blanket. His eyes were closed, and then they were gone. Martha stood alone in the empty hallway, listening to the rain. She went to the desk and erased the notes she'd written. She threw away the IV supplies. She stripped the bed and stuffed the sheets into the laundry. By sunrise, it was as if nothing had happened. But Martha couldn't forget that voice, that tattoo, those men. Years later, deep in the FBI archives, Raymond Clark found a document dated October 12, 1984. It was buried in the Presley file between surveillance reports and coded memos. The heading read, "Witness Interaction, Subject Confirmed Alive." The report described an incident at a rural Tennessee clinic, a cardiac episode, medical treatment by a single nurse, federal agents dispatched for retrieval, subject relocated per Phoenix protocol guidelines, witness debriefed and sworn to silence. The location matched, the date matched, every detail matched Martha's memory. At the bottom of the report, a handwritten note read, "Subject had accidentally obtained intelligence regarding covert operations involving high-ranking officials and entertainment industry assets. Termination not authorized. Relocation approved. Subject to remain under surveillance indefinitely." Raymond sat back, the document trembling in his hands. Elvis Presley hadn't passed away in 1977. He'd been erased, hidden, relocated under a program designed to protect people who knew secrets too dangerous to speak. But what had Elvis discovered? What truth had he stumbled upon that was worth faking his death and silencing anyone who saw him afterward? And why, decades later, was it still buried so deep? The man who chose silence. Raymond Clark had always believed in truth. At 63, with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and hands that trembled slightly from years of handling delicate documents, he was known throughout the FBI archives as the keeper of secrets. But Raymond had never kept secrets for the wrong reasons. He believed that truth, no matter how painful, deserved to see light. Until now, he'd never questioned that belief. until the final tape. The reel was labeled simply 1992 Final Statement. Raymond threaded it onto the old machine with shaking hands. 1992. 15 years after Elvis Presley supposedly passed away, he pressed play and held his breath. Static filled the room. Then came a voice, older, worn, but unmistakable. "My name is Elvis Aaron Presley." Raymond leaned closer, his heart pounding. "I did not die in '77. I've been hiding ever since, not by choice. They told me it was for my safety, that I'd stumbled onto something dangerous, and if I did not disappear, they'd make me disappear permanently." The voice cracked with exhaustion and regret. "Fame was supposed to be a blessing, but it became my prison long before they locked me away in this cabin. I watched, followed, used, and when I finally realized what they were doing, when I discovered I'd been carrying their secrets across borders, smuggling their messages without knowing it, that's when they decided I was too dangerous to let live." Raymond stopped the tape, his hands trembling. He pulled out another file, Operation Nightfall, Classified Entertainment Division. The documents revealed everything. During the Cold War, the government had used famous entertainers to transport intelligence across international borders. Elvis, the biggest star in the world, had been perfect. He'd unknowingly carried coded materials, microfilm, and encrypted messages hidden in his equipment during tours. Handlers approached him with fan mail or promotional materials, and he delivered them because he was kind, because he trusted me. But in 1976, Elvis found a sealed envelope hidden in his guitar case. Inside were photographs, documents, and names, high-ranking officials, foreign operatives, entertainers, part of the same program. He realized he'd been used, and he threatened to expose them. Raymond found a memo dated January 1977, subject aware of operational parameters. The risk of exposure is high, termination or relocation mandated. 8 months later, Elvis was dead. Raymond returned to the tape. Elvis's voice continued, barely above a whisper. "I've been in this cabin for 15 years. Different names, different states, always somewhere small, somewhere forgettable. I watch my daughter grow up in photographs they send once a year. I hear my music on the radio, and it feels like listening to a stranger. I miss my family, I miss my life, but mostly I miss the music. Before it became something else, before I became a ghost." The tape ended in silence. Raymond found the final memo. "Subject deceased, officially. Mission terminated." Attached was a photograph, an older man on a cabin porch, gray-haired and tired, but unmistakably Elvis. Taken in 1988, 11 years after his supposed death. On the back, 5 words, "Let them remember the music." What do you think about files that were just released? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video on your screen. You will enjoy it.